Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Bott's Manual Assembly Workstation webinar. We're delighted that you've joined us today. My name is Mandy and I'm the Sales Director for the UK for Bott Workplace Storage Equipment. I'm joined today by Manuel from Bott in Germany, he's our expert in manual assembly workstations, and he will be giving you the webinar today, showing you everything that you need to know about manual assembly workstations. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we begin. We will be recording the webinar, and the webinar will be sent to you afterwards. But if you do have any questions and would like some more information, there will be questions answered at the very end. So please do ask your questions in the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. So now I'll hand over to Manuel, who will begin the webinar.
Thank you, Mandy. So also a warm welcome from my side. Today, I'm glad being here and talking to you about avero. Avero is the manual assembly system from Bott. It's based on a system you can create out of that different kind of workstations, single workstations, assembly lines, first in, first out shelves, whatever you can. So it's a rather big system that can be combined right to your needs or the needs of your product, the needs of your assembly. So today I would like to talk to you about your assembly flow, or let's say the flow of your product, the flow of your material, and how correctly designed workstations can enhance your productivity. So that's why we are here actually, or why you are here. We all want to be more efficient in whatever we are doing, either in our private work or in our business work. It's all about being more efficient. And the workstations in this business environment, the material flow is a crucial part of your value adding process. And if you save time there, if you, of course, in the end, you save the money. That's basically the concept. And I would run through 4 different steps with you. So first, talking about the concepts and topics perhaps that have an impact on the design of that concept. Then we have a look at the planning and layouting of an assembly area before we talk about the avero solution itself. What can be done with that? Of course, I won't leave without some experience we have from projects from the last couple of decades. We share that with you as well. If you have any questions, no worries, just write them down in the F&A functionality, and we answer them at the end of the webinar. Okay, let's start first. When you decide on an assembly concept, you have an existing concept, or you have a new product, you have a new facility, and you want to implement a new type of assembly there. Well, you start making the decision based on your product, based on the demand, based on the type of production you want to have. And we have this, actually simple chart. It looks a little difficult, but actually simple chart that gives a direction. There's usually not a black and white decision, or I want to have an automated assembly, or I want to have a manual assembly. It's always different shades in between, just for orientation where we are. So usually for high quantity products that have this high quantity, let's say per year, with the same type of product without any variance. Of course, the more quantity I want to produce, the easier it is this decision that I want to do it automated. On the other hand, if I have a product that could also have high quantities, but a lot of varieties, you would rather tend to do it in a manual way, because with a lot of variants, you have a lot of changeover in your products, not just the products, but also the material, the tooling. You might also have to train your people to all these different varieties, and it makes it rather difficult to automate that process. That's the first decision, but also, yeah, of course, looking at the capital expenditures. So if you start with a manual production, you probably start with a couple of €1,000. If you want to invest into an automated assembly solution, you're at a 6 digits number or even higher. So it could be sensible to start with a small investment and then to raise it as the product grows through its life cycle. Yeah, of course, the more flexible you would like to be, the more manual you should stay in your assembly. What does it mean? When you plan an automated assembly line, it is also always dedicated to a certain product and a certain process. And it's very hard to change it afterwards. Sometimes you just can change it within a certain black boxes or defined areas. If you are in a manual environment, there's always possibility of changing. You can change the tables themselves. You can change the material supply. You can change the way of assembly. Even the product can change because you always can adapt during your production process without high efforts. On the other hand, an automated solution, definitely as soon as it is ramped up, so after a year, 2 years probably, and running as needed, the productivity then will definitely be higher. So there's no doubt in that. But of course, it takes the time. I've just said 1 year, 2 years until you reach the final peak of productivity. And then you have to decide, do I have the time? Does my product run that long? So we are midst of that area in that complex field. What we are talking about today is this area. We talk about manual assembly, where people do the work on workstations. Hybrid, what does that mean? That's a mixture of automated or manual. Let's say could be a manual workstation with digital work instruction. Or we have a manual assembly line that has automated workstations in between, or automated quality tests, whatever. It's just a mixture of both worlds. And to be honest, that's from my experience, that's the real world there. There are few projects that are only manual. There are few projects that are only automated. Usually it's a mixture. It could be a mixture with a little automation or a high automated facility with some smaller manual parts in it. Okay, that has to be considered before. And then if you look a little closer into your assembly concept, what does impact your assembly concept? Some would think it's just a product. I have a look at my product and then I take out the parts and I just do the reassembly, and then that's what I need to look at. But it's not just the product. Of course, that's the most important thing. That's why it's highlighted a little. It's the parts you have. How many different parts do you have? How do these parts differ from each other? Could there be mistakes in picking these parts? So you have to consider that. How much space do you have? I love planning in new facilities when there's nothing else, because then I can plan the ideal assembly line or the assembly workstations. But usually there are some restrictions, especially when you have existing facilities, that has to be considered as well. Then which tools do you want to use? Electrical tools, manual tools, tools from a certain supplier? Do they have to fulfill some certification aspects? You have to consider the quantities. Of course, how many products do you want to produce? How much does the market actually need per year, per month, per day, whatever? What type of quality level do you want to have? I mean, if I would ask you, do you want to have a high quality product? You would all say, yeah, I want to have a high quality. What does it actually mean? How many parts per million might break during the production process, or how many claims do we accept afterwards at the customer side? So if you have from a supplier of medical devices, you won't allow a single part to fail. If you're a supplier of, I don't know, let's say remote controls for TVs, it could be accepted that one of 10,000 remote control breaks down at the customer. So that has to be defined before. Then, and that's what I'm going to look a little closer afterwards, which assembly steps do you have to take? How do you break down your bill of material, your product into steps? And that will be actually later the blueprint for your workstations, assembly line, single workstations, whatever. Do you have to have workstations that are ESD compliant? So electrostatic discharge. Do you have PCBs that you are working at? Then you have to produce them in a defined area. That has to be considered. And of course, ergonomics. When I started with Bott a couple of years ago, ergonomic was like, okay, I will invest into a height adjustable workstations because I like my employees. That's good if you like your employees. In today's time, ergonomics is also connected to efficiency. There are studies that say if your employee works in an ergonomic way, that means he has an height adjustable table, for example. He has good lighting. He is not stressed. He's at least 2 to 3% more efficient in his work. So he just has a higher output. Plus, he is 2 to 5 days less sick. So ergonomics is not just about loving your people. It's also about efficiency and raising your margins in the end. So how important is that topic in your case? All these factors have impact on how you build up your assembly concept then. And of course, you will never be able to fulfill all of your objectives. For example, you could have these objectives. This could be actually a manufacturer of medical devices, or let's say from the for airplanes, for example. Quality has the highest importance in that situation, but also flexibility could mean that we have a lot of different products. Another scenario could be that you want to optimize your assembly in direction of lead time. You want to be the fastest in the market, from order to fulfillment to shipping. Could be a demand of your market, or the point where you can distinguish yourself from your competitors. Another scenario from another company could be that they want to have the highest standard in ergonomics and quality. Perhaps the production workers are highly skilled and they lack of production workers, and they want to keep the existing workforce healthy and efficient in work. So then they have the maximum focus on ergonomics. In the end, you all have your own scenario on that. you won't be able to fulfill all of these, in that case, 5 different aspects. It will always be a trade-off. Please don't try to reach 100% everywhere. We are in situations where customers try to do that. The result is that we have sometimes a mixture of everyone and none of that objectives is reached, or that the project will never run. It will always be a negotiation and we have to change that or change that or change that. Just a recommendation in that case from our experience. Okay, so we have talked about the impacts. We have talked about the collision of multiple targets. And what else we have to consider when we're looking at the assembly concept? That's the last more theoretic slide before it gets a little more practical. So there's not just your product. Basically, you look at your product when you want to assemble it. But there's something that is even a little more important. And that's what we consider when we talk to you about your assembly workstations. And that's how does the material actually reach the final workstation or the employee who is working there. That's like the blood circulating through your veins. In that case, that's the material circulating through your company. And the workstation, when we talk about a workstation, it's always the interface between your logistics and the employee, the worker that is actually assembling your product. So just in that case, for example, we would have an assembly line. Your product is running from station 1 to station 2. We have the quality gate and at the end, a packaging workstation. And in order to give this employee the chance to fulfill his job, he needs the material. And the material flow comes from a supermarket stock, or it could also come from an external supplier or whatever, but it has to be here on time when the product reaches that station. There are multiple methods. For example, Kanban could be used. I'm not talking about that right now, just giving you the idea what you have to think when you create, when you configure a workstation. It's not just the worktop, it's also the material that comes to the workstation, but also that leaves the workstation. Imagine a situation where you only push the material to a workstation and it doesn't flow off. Then you get stuck in that material. From a lean point of view, that's a lot of waste and will end in, let's just say, chaos. Okay. So far regarding actually the impacting factors. I now want to talk with you on the base of an actual example product, how we would start planning such a layout. I know there are a lot of theoretic backgrounds and there's a lot of work you have to do. What I'm showing you now is just an idea, what to think about, and perhaps a guideline. We're not talking about methods right now. Just think of an automatic coffee machine. So that was my example. When I was standing in front of the coffee machine, I thought, how does that thing, how is that thing assembled? And then I went through all the possible parts. I didn't disassemble it. It's not the entire bill of materials, but there should be a brewing unit somewhere in this coffee machine. There's a pump, there's a heater, a water tank. We have a small display, the grounds container, milk container, drip tray, grinder housing, whatever. There could be multiple parts. And yeah, then I think this is not the last layer of the bill of material. There should be more. So you could also break it then a little further down. You have inside of the brewing unit, you have different valves, seals, screws, C-parts, filters, a lot of things. And yeah, basically that coffee machine consists of multiple hundred parts. And how do you combine these different parts to a working product in the end? So that's always the question we have before we decide for a certain layout and before we design our workstations. We at Bott, we can't answer that question. That's your question to answer. And of course, you know that. You know your product, you have the people that design it and that assemble it, and you usually have an idea how to combine the different parts to have a working product in the end. But when we now throw that into your assembly area and try to build an assembly process out of that, we usually start looking at the final assembly. I'm not starting with the small screws. I look at the final assembly, so usually before the packaging here. And what is done there? The housing is put onto a workpiece carrier. The pump is installed, the display. All these parts are installed together. Then these, let's say I would say the purchasing parts probably. These are all these plastic parts in the end are installed. Everything is packed. In between, of course, we have these quality gates. Looks rather simple, but I try to build that into a final assembly line and come to that situation. This is out of our configuration tool. This is the assembly line based on the process steps before. Now it looks a little more close to actually production. It's still not a working layout. But think of the steps I told you before. We start with the housing of the machine. Let's think it comes from a supplier. It comes on a pallet and will be brought to the first station. The pump and the heater are installed at the second station. How do they reach us? They come from a pre-assembly workstation. They are sub-assemblies, and they are delivered by internal logistics right to that place with a trolley in that case. Next step is the display. So the product runs to workstation 3, and in that here a display is going to be installed. It also comes from a pre-assembly area. In this case, it is provided through a first in, first out shelf right to the place of use. Almost the same with the coffee beans grinder that is installed here, the brewing unit here. You see, it's not just about the pure material, the C parts here. In that case, it's about the sub-assembly groups. Why don't I produce these sub-assemblies on this final assembly line? Probably because they take longer or shorter than the actual cycle time would be. So in that line, I have defined the cycle time. I say my employees need 30 seconds per unit. And a pre-assembled unit could take 60 seconds. So it would break my cycle time in this assembly line. So therefore, I do those pre-assemblies. Could also mean when I'm in an area where the final assembly line isn't used all of the time. The same employee could start his work at the pre-assembly, provide the material on the final assembly, and then go to the final assembly and produce the final work pieces there. Yeah, we just go on. We have a quality gate here, automated or just a visual check. Here, the supply parts come also by pallets in that case. Everything is installed and in the end packaged. So from the product, from the parts to the manufacturing steps to the first layout, we have done these 4 steps. And I talked about the pre-assemblies. How do these look like in our example? In this case, this would be the stations for pre-assembly. What do I have as pre-assembly? I have the pump that is built at a single workstation like that. Once again, we have a workstation, we have material provided from the back and perhaps from trolleys. We have the display that is also built on a workstation. Number 4, we have the grinder that is built here. And the 5, the brewing unit is built by that. So we first designed our final assembly. Then we thought, how could the pre-assemblies look like? That's just pre-assembly per pre-assembly. And then we combine it. And that would be our final, no, not the final, that would be our first combined layout. And I could now highlight where my product runs on that line and where my parts, where my sub-assemblies come from. That's from here, from here, from here, from here. With that first layout, I have an idea of the process and I have an idea of the needed space in my facility. I can already put it into a larger CAD file of my plant and see if it's working. And now I can also plan the overall logistics process around that layout. What would be the next step? That I look inside each single workstation, like for example that one, and have a look what material is actually located at that workstation, on which place. That's once again one of your tasks. You know the actual parts that are needed here. You know the quantities or the how often they are replenished, and therefore the quantities you need. All the things can be provided from your side, for example, in a larger table with Excel or whatever. And then we refine that situation to define exactly what is supplied where. Does a workstation like that with 1300 millimeters length, is it enough? Or do we need a larger, smaller workstation, whatever? That will be the refinement afterwards. But right now you have decided on a layout of your assembly as a next level of your project development. And that's what I wanted to talk with you, wanted to show you. It's rather straightforward. Let's say it's a lot of common sense inside of that, but also a lot of knowledge from your side and from my colleagues that do the consultation for you. So it's always that we work together in that case to reach the final layout. This is right from our configuration tool. Usually when we do a visit on your site or we have a video conference, we start with that configuration tool and then create such a layout within a couple of minutes. And then it's the refinement that takes a little longer. I'm going to show you a first small glimpse from the configuration tool afterwards. So I talked a lot about the assembly line, about workstations, FIFO shelves, whatever. Just want to give you some real picture impressions what I'm talking about in that case. So single workstation, it's basically a table that is situated somewhere in your facility that has a dedicated product to it or dedicated process where it belongs to. It is highly flexible. You can adjust it to many different projects. The different to a workbench is that it is really dedicated now to a process or product. It can still vary, but it's not. It's inside this process, and you can adapt it by height. You can adapt it by tools you need. By if you need more boxes or more of these plates, whatever, it can be configured entirely free. Another advantage of these single workstations, they are height adjustable. If we think of an assembly line, it won't be possible to do the height adjustable there because we have multiple people working on on that height. So you would need your entire workforce to be at the same height, 1.80 m, for example. Then you could do the height adjustability there. But yeah, that's a trade-off between workstation single and the assembly line. You can do a high product variation on the same workstation, and of course they are easy to move. You just 2 pairs of hands and then lift them and bring them somewhere else. Single workstations can also work like a production line, or like an assembly line. I often have the situation that customer comes to us and says, I need an assembly line because I want to be faster. Well, that's only half of the truth. You can be as efficient with connected single workstations. Look at that situation. I have multiple single workstations here. They are single because I want to have the advantage of ergonomics in height adjustability. But they are connected in between with these trolleys. They work as a buffer stock. So we start on that, we start on that first workstation here. The products are provided, and then she's working, and I know there's a lady working there. And she puts the final products of her working process on the next trolley. And on the second workstation, there's another lady picking up the pre-assembled thing and working and bringing it to the next. So you also have this flow through that line. That's also a type of line, but in that case with single workstations. So it's still very adaptable to your process. You can still move it easily. You have all these advantages of a single workstation, like height adjustability, and these small stock buffers. You have a little bit of a risk taken out you would have in a assembly line. But nevertheless, there's still a lot of situations where assembly line is exactly the right situation for you. When you look at cycle times, when you have a defined product or combination of variants of products, and you have clearly defined work instructions, and you can define on a cycle time. This will be the optimum of your solution. Takes a little longer to plan it, but when it's running, it's the most efficient way then. So you will reach the shortest lead times with an assembly line like that. Remember, we are still in the manual environment. We are not automated. We have a manual transport, but it's still the most efficient from this manual topic. Yeah. I have almost non-work in process in here. So from a lean perspective, it's the ideal situation. You could create a return of your workpiece carrier underneath or behind that. So very from the view of the space consumption, it's also the best situation, and the material can be supplied from behind. Ideally, you only have just one logistical track behind there. So yeah, talking about an ideal world, all other situations are always not just a trade-off, but a combination of these different objectives you want to reach then. And derivation of the assembly line is the U-shaped assembly line. That's rather common. So in this case, the production of the product starts here, and we here in that example we have a one piece flow. I'm sorry. Where employee starts here and runs the product through all different workstations. So it's not a workstation per person. It's rather a workstation per working step. And the employee does all these different steps. In the end, he brings the product on such a trolley to the middle and starts again. And that's the actual reason why it's built in a U. If it would be a straight line, he would end somewhere in the rear space of that facility, and he would come over and start here. That's also a waste of time. And from a lean perspective, that's another idealization of layout. Of course, it has some trade-offs. For example, it's very consumptive regarding the space needed, and I have a logistics supply from 3 different sites, not just one path behind. But it's very, very common, and you should know about it, and it's well, always a good environment for working there. Yeah. Okay. So far regarding these layouts concepts, I promised to have a look at our configuration tool to see actually what we are doing here. What do we use it for? The configuration tool is giving you an impression of what your final assembly could look like. We have all of our different products in the assembly, in the configuration tool. So each single part, for example, a single work profile is in here. So we can combine it to every type of layout. But usually we start like that we start with some existing workstation and work a little further from that. So what I prepared here, this is the combination of assembly line with single workstation. That's what I was talking before. And in that case, I have the trolleys, I have the workstations, the next trolley. And I can now easily change it. So you want to have these a little more to the upside. I did something wrong. I'm sorry. No. Or if I want to delete it entirely, I can now adapt it right to the need of your process in the end. So what can we show you in this area? For example, let's have a look at a certain scenario. Once again, we are in an assembly area where we have a final assembly line. This is without a lot of material. The idea is that the material is inside that box and it's then combined by these employees. It is also provided by sub-assembly stations, pre-assemblies. There's a guy working here. And then we can run through every single step of this scenario and talk with you and your colleagues if that would be an idea how you could assemble your products then. We call it scenarios. They come out of certain customer projects, and we thought that's interesting to share them with all of our customers. But of course, we usually just start with a simple station and then, well, that's interesting. Oh, no, I rather want to have that one. And then we take that one and we start working on that basis. So not just the workstations, but also situations where we have a workstation with a FIFO shelf behind, or just single shelves that can be used as supermarkets. In this case, everything is also adaptable. I can easily adapt, let's say, this little channel to a narrower one so that your boxes fit inside there. Yeah. So for example, I would make it like that. Now I have a 300 millimeters width that you can fit your boxes in there. Real advantage is that in the end, you have a picture of your layout. You will receive that picture. You will receive a link that you can watch in your browser and that you can share with your colleagues. And as you know, it's always easier to talk about pictures than just about tables and whatever. So that's where we come to your site and help you by planning your layout situation. Okay. Let me jump back to my presentation. Sorry for hurrying a little, but we don't want to run out of time in the end. Wow, that was absolutely basics from a helicopter perspective on layouting, planning. We all know there's a lot more behind that, but a lot more would mean it would take us two days, and a webinar for 2 days is a little too long. I just want to give you an impression of what you can do, what we can do, how we can support you in that case. So I always end my webinars with a small tips and tricks session. Well, most of these tips are common sense, as I said before, but I've seen so many projects where common sense didn't play a role. So I just want to share them with you that you don't fall into the same pit. It's always good to know your product and analyze your product on the first step. We have had situations where hasn't been a product yet. There was just an idea. And then we started over creating layouts and whatever. And almost before we were finished, they came, oh, our final product now looks different. It's bigger, it's has different parts, and then we start over again. Or we use the created layout and it doesn't fit properly. So it all starts with the product, and in your R&D department, they have to do the perfect job. And ideally, we start creating the layout with the first prototype, the first tangible product then, because then you get an idea, how big will it be? For example, if you create a workstation with material supply from the behind, and your product is already 600 millimeters high, and you won't reach some of those parts. You just see it as soon as you have the tangible product. So analyze it and have a look. How can it be broken down into sub-assemblies that help you optimize the production in the end? And if it can't be broken down, ask your R&D department if it can be. Then, when you bring it to the assembly, have a look at the final assembly first and break down the structure of the bill of material into pre-assemblies, into parts that are supplied directly from your service supply provider, and bring the steps in a row. That would be the situation or the time when you think about cycle times. Can the cycle times be realized? And if you really want to do it properly without any trade-offs. We had situations, let's say cycle time 30 minutes, then we plan 30 seconds, sorry. Then we analyze every single picking and assembly step, and we add them up, and we end at probably 27 to 28 seconds, because the product then has to go to the next step, and the previous product has to be picked. So don't come to the situation where you think, I could add another assembly step. Oh, okay, I'm at 30 seconds now, but that will work out. It will never work out. And the people working in front of that know that, and they will find ways that it works out, but it's usually a trade-off with quality in the end. So have a look at your final assembly. How do you want to build it together? Sorry, that was that slide. Then set your targets. As shown before, there are multiple objectives you could follow. What is the priority? And follow that through all of your steps. Don't try to build everything at the same time. Don't try to reach all the targets. It will never work. If you look at your production, don't just optimize it locally. So you've seen the layout before, and I had a pre-assembly and I had a final assembly. These could be in different departments. If one department leader decides to optimize his pre-assembly and he doubles his output now and sends it over to the main assembly, they will once again be stuck in material. So optimization should also always be analyzed in the entire process. The realization of that optimization can then be done step by step, one after the other. And please use standards. Don't try to build everything on your own from scratch with your, for example, out of aluminum profile, you then will have the workstation you wanted to have. But what if you want to have a second workstation a year later? What if you want to have additional swivel arm or whatever? You will always have to start designing it and building it on your own. If you use standards, you can just say, I bought it this year, I want to have the same next year. You can always combine different type of products with each other. So you've seen my examples, the single workstation, the first in, first out shelves, the assembly lines, they're all built of the same parts. You can combine them. You can combine the accessories with each other. That's the advantage of standards. So just think where you use standards at the moment. You probably use Microsoft Office. So you use PowerPoint as your standard. What if you would have a department that uses Open Office, another department uses some Mac software? In the end, it wouldn't fit to each other, and one of your departments wouldn't be able to open the files of the others. So we're already talking about standards in many ways. We are using a lot of standards. The easiest standard is when you read my slide, you start on the upper left and go down to the bottom right. That's the standard, widely spread. So use these standards, not just a combination of different things, and everything is individually custom made in that case. Well, these are my do's and don'ts, or rather do's instead of don'ts. I hope I could run you through the ideas that are behind Bott Avero, behind our idea of creating efficient workstations and entire assembly areas. This would be the right time now to hand over to you, Mandy, again, to give our guests a little impression where they can get more information from.
Wow, thanks, Manuel. I thought that was an excellent overview, and I'm sure our guests will have the same impression as me, that this is not a product range that's just about buying something off the shelf, is it? There's so much consultation and collaboration, because we want to design with you the right solution for your working environment. So yeah, the what happens next? We have a full sales team here in the UK who have been trained in the assembly line systems and the workstations. If you want more information on this system, there are many ways that you can get in touch with us. You can download our brochure. You can visit our website, where there are lots of further information about why Avero is best suited to your process. We are also exhibiting at the Southern Manufacturing and Electronics Show in February, and it would be fantastic if any of you wanted to visit us there and have a look at the product in real life, so to speak. We can demonstrate there for you what the product could do for your business. And of course, if you've got any questions or want advice from us on the system, you can always contact our team. We would be happy to answer questions, talk with you about what to consider for your particular process, visit site, have a video conference, and start the next steps to delivering an assembly workstation or an assembly line that suits your process.
I'm personally really looking forward to the Southern Manufacturing, because I will be there as well. And I'm very interested in the ideas of our customers and the discussions we have on site and actually touching the product then.
Yeah, me too. So now we're going to look at questions and answers. I can see in the inbox that we do have a couple of questions. So the first question is about the process. how long does the process take overall? This question is really referring to how far in advance, Manuel, should a potential customer be contacting us about this? How long does it take for the whole process to be complete?
So when should you contact us? In the earliest possible situations. So as said before, as soon as you have an idea or perhaps the first tangible product, it would be the right time. Even if you say, I don't have a finished facility yet, I'm still in the planning of the process. That would be the perfect moment to talk about a possible layout, or let's say 2 or 3 different possible layouts that then can be the base of your further development of your building, of your processes, etc. Well, that's the ideal solution. Let's say usually it takes from our first visit till up to the first idea of layout. It can be done within a couple of days, because you've seen in our configuration tool, we just combine the different products. The longer time then will be the refinements. You take it to your colleagues, you discuss it, you refine it. We probably have a change in products, whatever. My experience is that could take from 1 week, great, up to 3 months. Absolutely average, okay. 6, 8 months usually is too long then, because a lot of things change in that time. And then from the day you decide up to your final layout, you send us the order between, let's say, 20 and 35 working days. We are talking about standard products here. All these standards are at our facility. We combine them and bring it to your site. Yeah, roughly 25 to 35 working days, or 20 to 35. Depends, of course, on the quantity and if it's just a single workstation or if it's assembly line with multiple pre-assemblies. Yeah.
All right,
I hope
thanks.
I answered that. Yeah.
We do have a question about the configurator, if it's available for customers to use, or is it only available for Bott?
So it is installed on the laptops of our employees. Since you've seen, there's a lot of consulting connected to creating such a workstation, and I'm very sure you would be able to do it on your own, but it will take you a lot of time. So it would be it's just much easier to talk to one of our consultants and let him create the ideal layout, especially because he has a lot of experience and he has seen a lot of companies before, and he could just share the experience he had there. So there is no software available for our customers or interested people, but you're always free to ask us, and there is always someone planning it for you then and giving you a first impression of your layout for free.
Yeah, good answer. We're ready and waiting to do that for you.
Yeah.
And the last question is about installation. It's quite a complex system and normally tailored to a bespoke requirement. So the question is about, do we fully install the product as well?
Yep. So as long as it's needed. When you have seen the single workstations, they are fully assembled in our plant and then shipped on a pallet, packed to your site, so you don't have to do any assembly work anymore. You just have to plug it in. And when it comes to assembly lines, or if you need certain assembly work on site, of course, we are going to do that. It's just much more efficient, and then we can guarantee the high quality we promise. Yeah.
Perfect. All right, well, that's all of the questions that we had so far, unless anybody does have any others. But don't forget that after the webinar, you will get a copy, and we are available for any questions. Don't hesitate to contact us, because we would love to help with any requirement you've got for manual assembly workstations. So it remains for me to thank everybody for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed it. There will be a little survey popping up, if you don't mind, just giving us a little bit of feedback so that we know how to improve our webinars for the future. That would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, a big thank you from my side for having me. It was a pleasure to sharing the experience, and I'm really looking forward for the Southern Manufacturing actually getting in contact with you and yeah, talking about the things that make a lot of fun from my point of view. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day, everybody.
Goodbye.